Uprzejmie zapytujemy, kiedy pan minister opracuje normy zanieczyszczeń dla środowiska odnośnie zanieczyszczeń gazami.
Można wyciągnąć
Ustawa antyodorowa powstaje.
za 3 lata, tak jak ona
Ja powiedziałem, że
Could you please tell us what are your concerns?
Pierwszy problem to jest koncentracja przemysłu szkodliwego dla środowiska, a więc przemysłowe fermy tuczu, zakłady utylizacyjne.
Ja chcę czyste powietrze, żeby nie śmierdziało, żeby moja wnusia żyła w czystym powietrzu, zdrowo, tak? Żeby mogła żyć naprawdę zgodnie z przyrodą.
I'm Tracy Worcester, and I've lived in the countryside most of my life. But whether it's in Britain or abroad, I've seen small family farms going bankrupt because of the arrival of giant factory farms. For years, I've campaigned against the destruction of rural livelihoods and to improve animal welfare. So these pigs have been foraging, getting rid of the bracken in a National Trust wood. This film is the story of my 4-year exploration into the global pig business. A journey which goes from the UK to the USA, South America and Poland. To find out where and how pork is produced, who wins and who loses. But you'll be lucky to find any of this information on the label. Thick pork sausages. But you can look everywhere on the packet. There is no indication where it comes from. Though you can buy high welfare pork in some UK supermarkets, if you want to pay less for your high welfare pork while paying your farmer a fair price and keeping your money in the local economy, it's best to go to your local farmer's market.
They know the quality of the product because we have a direct relationship with our customers. If they don't like what we sell them, they'll come back next week and tell us.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's marvelous. You should care.
For stallholder Mike King, the secret of producing top-quality pork lies in the humane treatment of his animals.
I think pigs, they're such intelligent, sort of inquisitive animals. They need to be active all day long, searching for roots and grubs and things like that. Whereas pigs in concrete boxes, they've got nothing to do all day long. They're totally bored. It's one of the reasons why I left that more intensive farming and decided to keep them like this.
The intensive farming Mike referred to was pioneered in America, and it's the way most supermarket pork is produced. Early in my inquiry, I met up with veteran animal welfare campaigner Tom Garrett, who's opposed intensive livestock production ever since it began.
What we have, I think, is the application of industrial systems that were designed to build cars and build machines to living creatures.
It's infinitely cruel in my mind, and no civilized society, whatever civilized society means, ought to countenance it. Sows, for example, are subjected to confinement in a very narrow cage, so narrow they can't even turn around during gestation.
Workers in these installations cease to regard the animals even as alive, I think. They become habituated to cruelty, and eventually they become genuinely brutalized.
I believe such cruelty happens when pigs are seen not as animals, but as an industrial raw material. But the more I've looked into industrial farming, the more I've come to believe that it's bad for our food, our health, and the livelihoods of rural communities. America's industrial pig farmers copied the chicken industry by cramming thousands of animals into a confined space. There are sometimes as many as 10,000 pigs in buildings like this, their waste dropping through a slatted floor. One of the workers I met told me what it was like working there.
Y trabaja uno 12 días y descansa 2, Pues lo que me ha afectado son los ojos y luego pues a veces quiere dar vómito. Eso es todo lo que a mí me ha...
Over the years, scientists have studied the effect of working in these installations and have found again and again that they can damage workers' health. One man who studied the scientific literature is Dr. David Wallinger.
The risks that have been most studied are definitely the risk to people working inside the facility. And there is an extensive amount of science that really goes into some detail about how a pretty large percentage of the people working in these facilities, whether it's hogs or chickens, will come down with chronic sinus infections, asthma, bronchitis, and other respiratory diseases that are related to this mixture that they're breathing in.
The problems with pig waste are not confined to those working in the farms. I met Rick Dove, former lawyer and Army colonel turned fisherman, who campaigns for clean water in North Carolina, where there are hundreds of factory pig farms.
It's the way they get rid of their waste that's really most problematic. The hogs dump their feces and urine on the floor. It goes under the hog house out to a lagoon, and there are no beautiful women in bathing suits by any of these lagoons. But it goes out to the lagoon, and then they slop it on the fields. And then it runs off into these drain pipes they have underneath the fields. It runs off into the ditches, and it goes right down to our streams, creeks, and rivers. And it's full of nitrogen. It's basically untreated waste. There are 10 million hogs in this small area, and see, those 10 million hogs are producing more fecal waste each and every day than 100 million people.
The first thing to realize when you're talking about the gases that come out of a big confined swine operation is that it's really a toxic brew, that there's so many volatile gases mixed in with dust, bacteria, and antibiotics, and they're all mixed together in a very, very complex mixture of some 300 or even 400 different substances. So that's what one is exposing a neighbor or a family or a child to.
During my research, I visited people who live near giant pig farms.
They came out and tested my water, and in a couple of days, I got a letter telling me not to drink my water, don't bath in my water, don't cook with it. And there's flies on the side of the house, all around the doors, all around the windows, great big greasy-looking flies. I have been to the allergy clinic for my allergies from this, trying to breathe. And it makes my eyes run, it makes my eyes puffy, it makes my nose run, it makes my throat sore.
When it's spring, it just cuts your breath off. And you get like phlegm in your throat, your eyes start running, you know, and you just get a headache, you know, and you just really almost, I guess, just get angry because you can't breathe.
In 2003, when the US government introduced new controls on spraying pig waste, it was estimated that 80% of the farms in the USA at the time were in breach of the new regulations. And in 2004, a scientific study found that many older lagoons in North Carolina were leaking waste and contaminating the water table. Throughout the 1990s, small farmers in America campaigned against the growth of big farms.
Food has become a major profit-generating commodity and has spread onto a global playing field where food producers, workers, and consumers are reduced to pawns, manipulated by giant corporations.
During the 1990s, large-scale meat processors bought up livestock farms. This vertical integration allowed the corporations to control the whole process from farming and slaughtering to packaging. The factory farms were now the main buyers of pigs. And as the price paid for pigs fell, many small farmers went bust. One survivor was Paul Sobocinski.
They wanted to control the market, and they wanted to control about how livestock production was going to be raised, and they wanted to take more of the profits from production agriculture, take the profits the farmers made as independent producers and put them in their pocket. My tipping point, I think, was when I saw hogs go down to $8 a hundredweight in this country, worse than depression in the 1930s. And I saw that that pain I saw that happen to farmers, that I knew that we had to fight back, that we had to stand up, or they were just going to roll over and take democracy, our freedom.
Why is it when people are in bondage to their government, it is called tyranny? But when the oppressor is a multinational corporation, it is called efficiency.
Opposition from farmers and environmentalists to the growth of factory farming had some small victories. In 2001, North Carolina banned processors from buying livestock farms, and also banned new-build factory farms from installing the lagoon and spray system. Around this time, many agribusinesses started to look abroad. One such company was Smithfield Foods of America, the world's largest pig producer and processor, with annual sales of almost $12 billion. It processes 27 million pigs a year, employs over 52,000 people, and from its US base has expanded to 15 countries. And a country to which Smithfield turned their attention was Poland, destined to join the European Union, and a country where land and former state farms were relatively cheap, labour costs low, and regulations light. In Poland, Smithfield bought the former state-owned slaughterhouse, Animex, followed by 21 state farms. Its managing director explained why.
We are in the farming business because we want to make money on it, yeah? And we believe that this has a great future. First of all, we are by far the biggest farmers in Poland. Secondly, we believe that Poland is a great opportunity for let's say, a foothold to get into the European market.
In Poland, the arrival of big foreign factory farms coincided with a change in the law, which reclassified the definition of pig feces from sewage to fertilizer. This enabled the farms to use spraying techniques like this, common in America.
No, raczej skorzystali ci, co używają dużo tej gnojowicy i to jest, powiedzmy, jeden z negatywów rozwoju gospodarczego w Polsce.
In 2003, Robert Kennedy Jr., nephew of the former US president, went to Poland to warn them of what he saw as the dangers of industrial pig farming. In 2001, he had filed a court case against Smithfield Foods, alleging that they'd broken environmental laws in North Carolina. He obtained a settlement in which Smithfield agreed to enhance environmental protections at 260 hog production facilities.
I feel the responsibility to come here and warn Poland that they're going to try to get away with something in Poland that people in the United States now recognize is a catastrophe.
The arrival of factory farming in Poland was controversial. The Polish Senate's Agricultural and Environmental Committee held a hearing to investigate it. They invited evidence from both Kennedy and from Smithfield.
Adopting the Polish system of production to meet these challenges requires capital inputs for the upgrade and modernization of both farms and plants.
20 years ago, there were 27,500 independent hog farmers in the state of North Carolina. Today, they've been completely replaced by 2,200 hog factories, 1,600 of them either owned or operated by Smithfield Foods. Smithfield controls 85% of the hog production in the state. And every factory that's built gets rid of 10 traditional family farmers and replaces those jobs with 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs to workers who work in the plants. These facilities sicken the people who live downwind. Neighbors complain that they can no longer hang their laundry or sit on their porch during the summertime or plow their fields without becoming sick. There's now a moratorium on the construction of hog lagoons in the state of North Carolina. So here is a company that is coming to Poland and promising to modernize agriculture in Poland with a system that has been banned in the place where it was invented.
Some of Kennedy's concerns seemed justified. In the same year he visited Poland, a government report was published which showed that all 14 Smithfield farms inspected had violated some regulations, either environmental construction, health, or veterinary. These included failings in the disposal of their waste, failure to look after their employees' health and safety, and the improper storage of dead animals.
As in all companies in the world, we are making mistakes, but we are not, we are correcting the mistakes as soon as we make them. We're following all the Polish and EU regulations for farming, so we are not doing any additional pollution. On the contrary, we are really trying to protect it.
In 2004, I decided to go to Poland to see the impact of the new foreign factory farms and the lagoon and spray system on the Polish environment, rural life, and the quality of its food, which was destined for consumers all over Europe. I started in northwest Pomerania, where there are a large number of farms that used to be owned by the Polish state. The first state farm that Smithfield's Polish company Prima bought in 2001 was Boszkowo, which by 2004 housed 17,000 pigs. My guide, Marek Kreider, of the Polish Animal Welfare Institute, introduced me to one of the local residents. For many years before Smithfield arrived, they'd been complaining about their local groundwater, believing it to be contaminated.
Sam zacząłem chorować, między innymi zacząłem chorować po spożyciu wody.
Could you tell me what specifically is the illnesses that people are getting around here?
No, z tego co ja wiem, no to są przede wszystkim ze strony przewodu pokarmowego, żołądek, poza tym jakieś zmiany na skórze.
Also near Boszkowo, I heard locals' claims of what had happened to children who had swum in the nearby lake.
No takie normalnie po prostu takie jako odrzucenie czy coś takiego. Czerwone się robi, bo nic drapie cię i to po prostu...
Red skin, they got red skin.
Nie ma tak jak było powiedzmy nawet 2 lata temu, gdzie się łowiło ryby i było zielsko, tak w tej chwili nie ma. Ryby nie tak. Ona dosłownie dzień leży. Za 2 godziny ona już jest nie do brania. Ona się po prostu rozchodzi. Śmierdzi ryba.
I went to another village and heard about the smells. Here, another former state farm has been converted into a giant hog factory with 20,000 pigs on the fringes of a village.
Każdy, kto przyjedzie, to się pyta, jak tu mieszkacie. To ja po chemii tak nie zwracam, jak ja teraz po tych zapachach zwracam.
Locals weren't just concerned about the environmental impact of intensive pig farming. There was also resentment that people had lost control of their lives.
Jak większość mieszkańców tutaj, myślimy o tym, żeby użytkować tą ziemię, ale sami, z korzyścią dla nas, dla innych mieszkańców i produkując przede wszystkim zdrową żywność. Niestety nie mamy takiej możliwości, ponieważ firma Prima sukcesywnie wykupywała, dzierżawi, przepraszam, wszystkie grunty dookoła tej miejscowości, właściwie w promieniu powiedzmy nawet 20 kilometrów. Nie, my się z tym nie zgadzamy i to jest nie do przyjęcia, bo to są typowe praktyki monopolistyczne.
Czyli te ceny nagle spadły na żywiec, nie?
Do tego stopnia, że nikt krowie nie chowa ani świnie, a pole stoi utłoczone. Takie teraz rząd. To jeszcze my, to jeszcze, ale teraz te nasze dzieci, to nie wiem co będzie. Roboty nie ma nigdzie.
No job.
Wszystko bez robocie i te dzieci chodzą, muszą kraść. No, wszystko chodzi, roboty nie ma nigdzie. Zapowiada się taka bieda, że będzie złodziej na złodziejuje.
Okay. By now I wanted to see inside one of the factory farms. One person and no camera. Okay, why don't you want the camera there? I'd like her to follow and take a picture of the pigs inside the ventilation shaft.
You from there, will you?
Yeah, quickly before anybody comes. Unable to get an authorized picture of conditions inside any of Smithfield's Polish farms, a broken air vent was an inviting opportunity. The hard, slatted floor deprives them of their instinctive rooting. Plus, there's no straw for bedding.
Co Państwa tak interesuje tutaj?
I think we should skedaddle. Shall I run with that? Where? Well, we don't want them to take our camera. Let's go. Let's leave. I wasn't allowed to film inside a farm, but I was granted an interview with the Smithfield manager, and I asked him what he thought of complaints from local people of illnesses from the farm's activities.
I can understand that smell, but we are not aware about any illness or sicknesses of local people. If this is harmful, probably our employees who work with pigs, they should be dead already. You can find people which appreciate that we operate in the region, and some they are not happy. Majority it is connected with the jobs. People who are employed, they are satisfied. Who are not, they are not.
I asked a government official about the regulation of factory farms like Smithfield's.
My kontrolujemy ten proces na bieżąco i zmierzamy do tego, aby uniemożliwić brutalny atak, że tak powiem, przemysłowego tuczu na nasze gospodarstwa rodzinne. Staramy się tutaj wytłumaczyć wszystkim, również naszym rolnikom, że środowisko polskie wcale nie jest tanie i że musimy sobie zdawać sprawę z tego, że jest to coś, środowisko to jest coś, co pożyczyliśmy od wnuków. Będziemy musieli im to oddać.
Though I wasn't able to film inside a factory farm, after a tip-off, in 2005 an undercover team from Compassion in World Farming filmed at a Smithfield farm, showing what was in the stinking cesspit they called a lagoon.
Is there a bigger stick? Take them out.
Smithfield responded to these pictures by saying it was physically impossible for dead pigs to get into the lagoon, and they would never tolerate disposing of them in this way. And they also claim that local officials, after an investigation, concluded that the pigs found did not come from their farm. Later in the same year, another team from Compassion in World Farming managed to get inside one of Smithfield's farms at the village of Viskovice. Pigs in factory farms are usually raised on bare slats, but even on straw they don't look healthy.
Some really lame ones in there as well.
I asked Smithfield about these pictures, and they said that their pigs' health and welfare are their top priorities, and their Polish farms either conform to or exceed EU regulations. Although I've asked them twice, with regard to these particular pictures, they say that the allegations and the events described are absolutely false. I met a forester in western Pomerania who explained why villagers are complaining about living near two giant Smithfield factory farms.
Okay, we'll walk now.
Tworzenie i wylewanie gnojowicy na pola to odbywa się zwykle już od marca. No i praktycznie to trwa do listopada prawie bez przerwy. Także no, te smrody mamy ciągłe. Jest to takie stopniowe zatruwanie, no bo przecież te gazy, które są w atmosferze, wdychając je codziennie, no to my w codziennym życiu codziennym jesteśmy w jakimś stopniu podtruwani, nie? Tak jak tutaj stojąc i przypuśćmy te smrody, siarkowodór, amoniak, metan, skotar, inne przecież, a poza tym, no a gdzie są drobnoustroje, bakterie?
The next year, 2006, I was back in Viskovice after I heard about a campaign by local people against the pig farm, which is right next to the village primary school. In North Carolina, you couldn't put 250 pigs within 750 meters of a school, but here there are 12,000 pigs.
Szkoła jest oddalona od fermy około 150 do 200 metrów i najbliższym jest obiektem właśnie od tej fermy. I te dzieci często właśnie miały jakieś katary, jakieś łzawienie ucz, jakieś choroby alergiczne nawet.
Jak zaczęły się żniwa, to nie mogliśmy otwierać okien i wychodzić na przerwy. Wszyscy się źle czuli, jak wracali do domu.
There was a scientific study of the impact of the odours from the Wiskowice farm done 3 years earlier by Dr. Zbigniew Hallett, an epidemiologist who had been Deputy Minister for Health and Chief Sanitary Inspector in 3 separate governments.
We found that those who live in closer distance from this meat factory suffer more from headaches, from sneezing, from stuffed nose, from running eyes, burning eyes, from neurological, respiratory and intestinal diseases, just because of being so much exposed to the noxious gases.
Smithfield's representative in Poland, Morten Jensen, responded to these claims.
First of all, I say we are complying with all the Polish and EU regulation concerning any environmental issues with the plants. On top of this, we are a little bit, difficult for us to understand this complaint because the farms that we bought there was existing farms that have been operating over many years before we bought them. Yeah? But if there is issues, we are definitely taking care of this, and we are, cooperating with the local authorities to solve those issues.
More recently, Smithfield told me that allegations of air pollution had been the subject of proceedings, but had always been resolved in their favour. No danger to residents' health had been found to be associated with their activities. I asked the Minister for the Environment at the time why nothing could be done about the smells.
Odnośnie zapachów nie ma norm. W związku z tym to jest poza możliwościami jakiejkolwiek kontroli administracyjnej. I tak samo to występuje przy w Unii. Nie mamy standardów na zapach.
Given the historic experience, the Minister from the Law and Justice Party was very critical of the way factory farming had established itself in Poland in the past.
Wiele ferm funkcjonuje skażając środowisko, produkując żywność kiepskiej jakości, nie respektując przepisów weterynaryjnych, sanitarnych, dobrostanu zwierząt i tylko dzięki temu są względnie konkurencyjne. Polskie prawo musi być poprawione w tym względzie i precyzyjnie, zdecydowanie respektowane.
Every time I went to Poland, I was struck by its natural beauty. It's home to 200 species of birds that are rare or extinct in the rest of Western Europe, including 40,000 pairs of white storks that nest as cherished residents of Polish villages. It has the only sizable virgin temperate forest left in Europe and the last herds of wild bison. Its rivers are still free-flowing and unpolluted. This is a tourist area famous for its crystal-clear lakes. However, this is where there is a huge concentration of pig factories.
We don't need such companies. Tourism is the basic business for people who live here to earn money.
I know our people are supporting me. The direction that we are planning and we want to go our development is tourism together with small agriculture. This is the way that people could achieve economical independence.
If the experts are worried about pollution and the exploitation of the Earth's resources, shouldn't we be learning from Poland's traditional family farms and so protect them?
It works, it's adequate for this number of hectares and for the number of people, and it doesn't use a lot of energy, and it doesn't therefore contribute to the greenhouse effect. And as oil becomes more and more expensive, you'll surely find that this kind of farming is going to be more attractive and more economic for that matter.
Alicia Samley's farm has been in her family for generations.
Nasza produkcja świń nie będzie się opłacała, dlatego że powstawają duże fermy i one produkują bardzo dużo świń. W krótkim czasie mają pasze z różnymi dodatkami, dlatego świnie rosną krótko, nasze rosną pół roku i dlatego nie będzie się opłacać. Jak będą ceny spadać coraz niżej, to produkcja w ogóle nie będzie opłacalna. To właśnie się nie podoba, bo duże gospodarstwa mają im więcej hektarów, tym więcej dopłat.
A lot of the European officials are saying that the Polish farmers are too small. They've only got 18 hectares. What's too small about that?
They want to sweep them aside so larger operators can take over and everything will be eventually owned by the corporations, I think.
And what do you think will happen to Poland as a result of that?
If Poland's family farmers are exterminated, as it were, it will destroy Poland's culture and, as far as that goes, its soul.
So it seems that economic development is not being determined by the needs of people, but by the need for companies to grow and compete in the global market. And believe it or not, you and I are helping to fund this. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is funded by governments, lent Smithfield $25 million to facilitate another $75 million from private banks.
Smithfield benefited from a $100 million loan that was organized by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. This is taxpayers' money that's being applied to the expansion of Smithfield.
We have a mandate, and this mandate is to promote transition in the former communist countries. We are not driven only by financial profit, but because we are driven by trying to set the way, basically trying to have a catalyst effect. And in that way, bring along with us then the private banks.
The whole mission of the European Bank has been to industrialize Central and Eastern European agriculture. No question about that, and that has the effect of pushing out small farmers and independent farmers, and also the effect of opening it up to takeover by foreign corporations.
Polish agriculture at the moment is not productive enough. Small farms are too small to be competitive. What would have happened if Smithfield would not have invested? I think for me this is the big question, the fundamental question. Probably that you would have the largest meat processor in Poland, being liquidated, disappearing. Would that be a good thing for the Polish farming industry or not?
So the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has government officials from 60 countries on its board. So it sets the development pattern. But for who? For you and I, the electorate, the consumer, or for giant corporations and the private banks that invest in them?
I moim zdaniem to jest również przejaw pewnej nieuczciwej konkurencji w stosunkach międzynarodowych. Polscy rolnicy produkujący żywność znacznie wyższej jakości, lepsze, mają o wiele większe problemy i trudności z dostępem do łatwych, tanich kredytów na rozwój swoich gospodarstw, czyli tu konkurencja nie jest równoprawna. Śmiem twierdzić, że ta konkurencja jest konkurencją zaburzoną.
I wanted to find out who's driving this economic ideology which promotes big business at the expense of small farms. So I went to see economist Bernard Lietaer, a former central banker and successful currency trader, now a university professor.
The financial institutions are running the show. The governments are all indebted to them. In the United States, a third of all contributions to political campaigns are done by the financial institutions. So there's no chance that they will change the rules of the game. I would compare the money system as a ring that we put through our nose, and it leads us where it wants to go. We forgot that we created the ring and that we put it there.
So this taxpayer-funded restructuring and modernization effectively means the end to family farming. which produces good animal husbandry, good quality food, satisfying work, and protects the environment.
Górę i potem tu w tym śrutowniku się mieszalnika i jest swoja pasza, nie? To znaczy śruty, pszenicy, żyta, zmieszanych różnych. Potem się dodaje czy ziemniaki, czy zielone. W zależności od pory roku, co wytworzymy na tym gospodarstwie. To są naturalny sposób karmienia świń.
Unlike Alicia's homegrown food, industrial farming demands an industrial-scale production of animal feed.
You have to be competitive, and I don't think you can really be competitive on a small farm producing your local feed in a way your grandfather has been doing, and still being able to produce it in a competitive way to the big companies like ours.
Cargill is one of the world's biggest suppliers of pig feed, one of the main ingredients of which is soya, and much of this comes from South America, including the Amazon rainforest. Here, as in Poland, small farmers pay the price of industrialization, provoking widespread protest.
Isso dá uma tristeza muito grande na gente, por saber que tudo aquilo que a gente gosta de conviver, dizer até amar é uma palavra muito mais profunda, né? Mas que a gente gosta de conviver está sendo destruído, menos para ajudar um outro povo, mais para dar comida para bicho.
Que este povo ele seja solidário a nós e que dê basta nesse consumo dos produtos que são oriundos da Amazônia, principalmente soja.
In 2006, following pressure from their customers in Europe and Greenpeace, Cargill and other key traders agreed not to purchase soya from newly deforested areas in the Amazon. But there's still over 1 million hectares of soya grown in the Amazon, depriving local people of land and exposing animal and plant life to pesticides. Back in Poland in 2006, at a conference to discuss sustainable economic development in the EU, I found villagers demonstrating against the health and social impacts of factory farming. Inside, I heard, yet again, about the thinking behind the shift from local communities to global economies.
What is going to happen in rural areas in Poland, I can tell you that. There is the area of reforming the agricultural activities. And then there is the issue of what do we do with the people that eventually are being set free, because agriculture is getting more productive and people will not be able to work there anymore. So what we are trying to do is to develop alternative activities to help the rural areas to become, well, I'm not saying competitive, but to become economically viable.
Chciałbym tą satysfakcję na rolnictwie robić. Tylko to jest, że tak nie ma opłacalności, nie? A te hale ci stoją. Zobacz, te hale ci stoją. Widzisz tutaj, nie?
To co oni tam robią? They're making parts for cars.
Wow, I suppose that's development. Come on, boys, get off the land and get a job making car parts. The foreign retailers came to Poland in the early 90s and provided a growing market for industrially produced pork. Outside one supermarket, a disgruntled customer told me what he thought.
Oh.
Nic w smaku. Tak jakby wszystko było na czymś robione. Stacje te chemikalia.
Under the onslaught of big retailers, many farmers' markets and small shops have disappeared, but some are clinging on.
Proszę bardzo.
Klienci moi zapewniają mnie, że mięso moje jest bardzo dobre i w supermarkecie kupili raz czy dwa i skończyli już kupowanie z mięsem, bo mówią, że to niesmaczne, gumiaste mięso.
Here in Poland, that people prefer meat from such a small farms. People know that I have to apologize for the word that I will use, but people knows that the meat from pig factories is bullshit.
No moja przyszłość już z góry będzie stracona. Nie mam szans ich przebić cenowo, nie mam szans w ogóle, nie za duże są, zjedzą nas po prostu.
When I revisited Bolesław's Grodziec, he explained how powerless he felt in the face of the advance of industrial agriculture.
My nie mamy żadnego wpływu na to, że ta firma nam szkodzi. Nawet na dobrą sprawę nie mamy gdzie się poskarżyć, że ta firma robi nam krzywdę. No, a to wynika tylko z tego, że ta firma jest duża, że jest ogromna. Gdyby ona była mniejsza, pewnie jej wpływy byłyby mniejsze. Właśnie to bardzo dobrze to powiedział. To jest ta ogromna korporacja, która gdzieś tam przyjechała. Dla nas to jest dosłownie, to jest inwazja. No. To jest pająk, który siedzi na całej kuli ziemskiej. Widać, w jaki sposób, czym jest ta globalizacja. To jest coś ogromnego, które wysysa soki z tej ziemi, z ludzi. To jest taki ogromny pająk, pasożyt taki, który żeruje tutaj na nas.
In 2008, Polish farmers were on the streets again.
Będziemy żądali zamknięcia tych dużych ferm w Polsce, no i tego dzikiego importu.
Oczywiście dzisiaj największym problemem w produkcji trzody chlewnej jest największa korporacja na świecie, jaką jest Smithfield, który przejął polski Animex w roku 99.
30% niżej cen kosztów produkcji dostajemy teraz. Czyli dokładamy z własnych kieszeni, żeby sprzedać, żeby utrzymać nasze rodziny, to musimy, nie wiem skąd, teraz musimy chyba jechać do Anglii albo do Irlandii, zarabiać, wszystko pozamykać.
Nie wiem, czy pójdę na emeryturę, czy się powieszę, czy co zrobię, czy wyjadę.
So-called cheap meat from factory farms has flooded every market in the EU. And Smithfield has ambitious distribution plans for the UK. In 2008, its web page, using a bit of artistic license with a pig on grass, announced their aim to dominate, or in their own words, to be the preferred supplier to the UK retail and food service industry. To you and me, that's restaurants, schools, prisons, hospitals, etc. So I went to America to check out what Britain's supermarkets could look like. Smithfield, 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 loads and loads and loads of Smithfield food dominating the pork section.
This is the Walmartization and commoditization of every product. Smithfield is producing these uniform cuts, which is what, Walmart wants it to do. And in the meantime, they're homogenizing and they're diminishing quality of life for everybody in this country. And I don't think it's good for America. It's not good for our food supply. It's not good for our food security.
In 2006, I was refused permission to interview their chief executive, Joe Luter. However, to my delight, in 2008, they granted me an interview. Okay, so I'm just off to Smithfield to interview Dennis Tracy, who's their environmental waller, an attorney. Terrifying. They must absolutely loathe me, but I'm sure they'll be extremely polite, and they will reject every single thing that I say. Tracy was there.
Hi, Dennis Tracy. How are you?
Okay.
Welcome to Smithfield. I want to say I really appreciate you all coming here and talking to us. I mean, I know that you may not agree with what we do, but we really take pride in what we think we're doing, and I appreciate you giving us the shot to at least talk to you about it.
If you've got 10 million pigs, and the research that I did, and you could question this, but that they defecate 10 times more than a human being, you've got the equivalent of 100 million people defecating every day in a very small area. Surely we've got to understand that there's going to be a hell of a lot of people who are suffering from the stench, and whose fishing and whose swimming in the rivers is going to be jeopardized by that system.
The system is operated in a way that is not supposed to allow that. As far as things running off into the water, if that happens, that's against the law and it's wrong. Over-applying this material to the field is against the law. Having it drift onto somebody's property is against the law. We go out of our way and go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that we have a system in place that doesn't allow that.
My feeling is if the big industrial producers, gosh, there's a whole bunch of them. I think Smithfield's the largest. But if all of these big guys who have industrialized this practice were made to pay the full cost of environmental protection and disposing of their waste, any family farmer in America, any family farmer in this world, I think, could outcompete them at the marketplace.
The destruction of the small farm wasn't casual, it's systematic. It is the intention, it's the way that they make money, it's the design of this industry. Once a company owns both the slaughterhouse and some of the farms, it destroys the capacity of the farmers to organize and to form those cooperatives. And ultimately, it's the end of the independence of farmers. And they're no longer what we call farmers in this country. They're what they call serfs in Europe. They are no longer in control of their own lives.
You say that it's a natural progression that 20,000 independent farmers should go. Is it not related to the fact that you opened an enormous slaughterhouse and therefore could decide who you buy your pigs from?
Well, you can argue that, certainly. I think the common misconception that a lot of folks have is that companies like Smithfield go into our conference room and have a big discussion about how we're going to dominate the market and run people out of business and then sell our wares to the marketplace, and that just isn't so. We are responding to what our customers ask for, which is large quantities of meat products in a very short period of time, and they want it. And they want it in a particular cut, in a particular fashion.
You're talking about the retail outlets. That's your customer.
Yes, not the consumer. No. I'm talking about the customer, either the grocery store or the restaurant, whoever it may be.
Smithfield is one of the biggest food companies in America, and like many big companies, is a regular contributor to politicians in the states where it operates. You said that you're not trying to interfere with politics. And yet, you seem to give a lot of money to politicians who support your position. And they've changed the law to suit the pig industry's position.
Political contributions are not common. They are the way of life in American government. It's part of the American system, which is know your representative, make sure your representative knows not only you and your family, but your company and your business, so that as they make decisions, they're aware of the impact of the decisions they're making may have on that company or that community or that person. I think it would be, I think if you ask any politician here whether they have been purchased by Smithfield Foods, their answer would be no.
One of the few members of Congress whose positions are not tainted by the influence of corporate money is Dennis Kucinich.
The problem with the American democratic system at the moment is that there's overwhelming corporate influence. It influences almost every decision made in Washington. It influences that we have continuing war. It influences that Wall Street has extraordinary sway in Washington. It influences our energy policy, our tax policies. And only a constitutional amendment that would ban private money in public elections would save the country from drifting towards a type of fascism that is being visited upon us by large corporations who want government all to themselves.
All of the great political leaders from the beginning of our national history have been warning the American public against the domination by corporate power. Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Republican, said that America would never be destroyed by a foreign enemy, but he warned that our political institutions would be subverted by malefactors of great wealth who would steal them from within. Abraham Lincoln, the greatest Republican in American history, said during the height of the Civil War, I have the South in front of me and I have the bankers behind me, and for my country, I fear the bankers more. And Franklin Roosevelt said during World War II that the domination of government by corporate power is, quote, the essence of fascism. And Benito Mussolini, who of course had an insider's view of that process, said essentially the same thing. He said, he complained that fascism should not be called fascism, it should be called corporatism, because it was the merger of state and corporate power. And I don't think that corporations running the government of the United States of America has anything to do with American traditions. I don't call it the American way.
The arrival of corporate power in agriculture in the UK has pushed farmers off the land and onto the streets. In 2008, pig farmers from across the country besieged Downing Street.
We already know in this country we've lost 40% of the herd in the last 10 years. And I think if this continues and we don't get support, particularly from the supermarkets, then we're going to see another drop of equal proportions, maybe more. As our production's gone down, imports have gone up. And we know from all the work that we've done that 70% of those imports would be illegal to produce in the UK on the grounds of animal welfare.
In most EU countries, it's legal to keep pregnant sows permanently in stalls like these, although they've been banned in the UK.
How can they possibly sanction pork to come into this country reared on lesser welfare standards than they force us to do? How can that be right?
At the Oxford Farming Conference, I spoke to David Cameron, who, when in opposition, seemed to think it was possible to protect our farmers.
Yes, we should be an open, global, free trading economy. That's what Britain has always been. But it should be on the basis of rules. And I made the particular point about animal welfare, that just as we don't accept cars that aren't meeting our emission standards, so we shouldn't accept food that doesn't meet welfare standards.
However, there's no sign of any restrictions on lower welfare imports from his government.
Hands up for some peck ham. Anybody?
Over half the pig meat sold in Britain now comes from abroad, like this tin from Smithfield Foods. But it's not just tinned meat. Look at this boast which I found on the Smithfield website in 2008. If you've ever had Spanish chorizo, Polish wajewsko or French saucisson sliced at the deli counter, it might well have come from a Smithfield company in Europe. As a consumer, I'd like to see labels on these Smithfield processed pork products saying exactly how the animals had been raised. However, because there's no legislation requiring it, so there's no animal welfare information on any of these famous brands either. If you want to support farmers in your own country, look for your country of origin label. And if you want to buy high welfare pork, for example in the UK, look for the Freedom Food label, as the pigs have straw. Better still, look for free range, organic or outdoor on the label. It's particularly important to buy high welfare pork because of the emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, as explained by farmer Richard Young.
One of the big weaknesses of the system is a heavy dependence on antibiotics and the fact that that causes infections which can spread from animals to humans, such as salmonella, E-coli, Campylobacter, and even MRSA. And in the Netherlands, for example, where the most research has been undertaken, 40% of their pigs are carrying a strain of MRSA that can pass to humans. It's been spread rapidly on the pig farms because the antibiotics that are being put in the pig feed are actually selecting for it. That means they kill off the other bacteria which might provide some natural competition, but they don't kill off the MRSA because the MRSA is resistant. Meat which may appear very cheap is in fact very, very expensive, and in some cases that could be at the cost of our own lives.
We haven't had a new type of antibiotic, a new class of antibiotics for more than a decade now, and it's very difficult to see that we're going to find new antibiotics that would have the same effect as ones that we've had in the past, such as penicillin, which has saved millions of lives down the years. There just isn't that level of research into finding new agents. So I think we have to be more careful with the ones that we have now and how we're forcing the evolution of these strains, such as these MRSA strains, to become increasingly resistant to the antibiotics that we have, because there won't be anything left in the cupboard in a few decades down the line, which may really point to a less intensified system of farming where body mass increases are not the prime driver. It's not all economics, and we are having a long view in terms of human health.
The consumer ultimately has the power. They can say whether they buy cheap pork, that they don't care where it's produced or how it's produced or the quality of it. Ultimately, if the consumer refuses to buy that and prefers to buy meat which is a high welfare standard, produced in an environmentally sensitive way, then we'll be onto a winner, you know.
I would prefer that our food policies are decided locally, but unfortunately they're not even decided nationally. They're decided in the European Parliament here by our MEPs. But it is possible to change our food system by informed consumer choices and by supporting the politicians who are looking for more local production for local consumption. One such MEP is José Bové, once a farmer himself and spokesman for Via Campesina, which represents 150 small-scale farmers' organisations from 70 countries. He's now battling for farmers' rights in the European Parliament.
Qu'on stoppe la concentration et qu'on intègre à la fois le bien-être animal, la question de la santé et la question environnementale à l'intérieur des systèmes de production. Si cela est intégré dans le système de production, ce type d'ateliers gigantesques industriels ne pourront pas continuer. Donc il faudra interdire de manière claire l'élevage industriel concentrationnaire à l'intérieur de l'Europe.
Part of the puzzle is that people buy locally. That is a very potent form of activism, to say to the Walmarts of the world, we're not going to buy from you. We're going to buy in the local farmers market. You also need to sue the polluters. You need to demand your government enforce the law against them. You need to pass legislation that makes it very clear that they can't come into your communities and displace, you know, the traditions and the values that your country holds dear. And all of us, you know, we had an American Revolution in this country to create democracy. We need a new American Revolution in this country now to fight against the corporate feudalism that we are now dealing with, that is embodied so much by this industry, that is eroding everything and subverting everything that we care about in our democracy.